What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to review episode 2 of The Last of Us, an episode called Infected. It was written by Craig Mazin and directed by Neil Druckmann. Obviously, they're going to be the dream team on this show moving forward in terms of their writing and directing duties, which they kind of flip-flopped from the first episode. And holy shit, that was some damn good television. When you're reviewing film and television on a YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, sometimes it can just feel like work or sheer drudgery, but Jesus Christ, that episode fucking ruled, and all my reservations from the first episode have been totally washed away. I think the first episode remains a very solid episode of television, but this episode gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. There was one moment where I did yell out, and it was just the stupid... Anyway, the moment was totally insignificant. Ellie was being annoying and talking, etc. and so forth, pretending like she was checking into a hotel, and this little skeleton floated out. And as I was watching it by myself, I went, ah! Anyway, I immediately started cracking up because I realized the show had gotten its hooks into me. And that's what we're always hoping for when we watch a flick or watch a show or whatever, that emotionally we will be completely invested. And for people looking for great adaptations of like what survival horror is like in a video game, I feel like this episode is going to be the gold standard moving forward. I haven't played a ton of survival horror games. I tend to be drawn more towards giant like medieval fantasy role-playing games or strategy games. But I have dabbled, and when you're playing those games and like the controller starts shaking, whether it's something attacking you or your heart beating, and you only have a flashlight, and your character doesn't move very quickly, and things that do move quickly are coming after you, where if you miss on your first shot or two, it's going to get you. I've never seen a movie adapt those emotions and those feelings so successfully, because most adaptations of video games and film and television are horrendous. I mean, go see Assassin's Creed. It's one of the most unwatchable movies ever made, and it's based on one of the most beloved video game franchises ever made. So the track record on this front is pretty pathetic. But goddamn, The Last of Us. I know a lot of people complained that the first episode didn't really deviate that much from the game in terms of the cutscenes and the cinematics. But this episode, I felt like added in a few additional little curveballs, while at the same time more or less sticking to like the spine of the story from the game. And also, if you did not see my video from our for the first episode, I never played the game. I watched the entire like 2.5-hour video, like cutting together all the various scenes. So I don't really know what the gameplay was like. I only know the story, and then I read the official synopsis on Wikipedia to kind of fill in the gaps of what happened in between those scenes. And I didn't avoid playing the game. It was just a PlayStation exclusive when it was released, and I'm an Xbox guy, and I was playing a bunch of other games at the time. At any rate, I love video games, but it's a relief to see a show get one right. And who knows, maybe now the floodgates are open and we'll see a lot more adaptations. I mean, this game's kind of tailor-made to be adapted into this format, but can you imagine if somebody managed to turn the Dark Souls franchise into a movie franchise? I have a feeling most attempts at doing so would completely get it wrong and screw it up, but if this show continues to get big numbers, and it has so far, from what I read over on Variety, The Last of Us premiere episode reached over 10 million viewers across its first 2 days of availability, meaning that The Last of Us has already caught up to House of the Dragon's initial series premiere, making it the second biggest debut on the channel of the last 13 years. And according to this article, that figure makes The Last of Us premiere the second largest opening for an HBO show since Boardwalk Empire premiered in 2010. And just to put it in perspective, those numbers generated by The Last of Us were nearly double of that of the season 2 premiere for a show like Euphoria. So let's get into some of the reasons why this show is working so well. And if you've not yet seen the episode, go do so, because I will be going into spoilers. But once again, I just want to reiterate, this episode was very satisfying. I imagine it's going to end up being more entertaining and more thrilling and more gripping than most movies that I'll be seeing in the theater this year. So filmmakers, they better watch out, because shows like this are coming for you, and you've got to compete, you got to deliver. And this episode dove right in with a flashback to the initial outbreak in Jakarta in Indonesia back in 2003, when this professor of mycology named Ibu Ratna, I believe is her name, she's brought in to examine this dead body, and it's this nude body, and it's, you know, it's HBO. They're not afraid to go there. And we see her examining the body and cutting open the bite wound on the leg, and it's like this disgusting fungus in there. When she reaches into the back of the throat and starts pulling out samples, we see how the fungus is still moving. And she draws the conclusion that the best solution, because 14 workers from where this girl came from are still missing, that they should start bombing the city and everyone in it, and that she's going to go home to spend time with her family because there's no vaccine, there's no medicine. Death is the only answer for the infected. And so knowing all that information, it makes Ellie's immunity all the more impactful now that we know just how important and vital she might be if they're ever going to try and find a way to reclaim society, if that's even possible at this point, because obviously this war was lost a long time ago. Boston, which is relatively well off compared to other cities, is just completely, totally overgrown. Outside the quarantine zone, it's just infested with the infected. And from a distance, it's all very strangely beautiful. There are these wonderful quiet moments where they're looking at the very green Boston skyline, and the city's just absolutely gorgeous. The look and the design of this show are absolutely first rate. But then, of course, if you whip out your magnifying glass and zoom into the details, it's just horror and death and bloodshed and violence. And goddamn, this episode just had me gripped by the old testicles every step of the way as this trio starts trying to navigate their way through the city. And because this was her last episode, let's give a special shout out to Anna Torv as Tess. I first discovered her through the show Mindhunter, and season 1 was absolutely incredible, and I thought she was great on that show. But goddamn, she was fabulous in this episode. And I love how early on she explains to Ellie she's going to speak to her like an adult, and that neither Joel nor Tess are good people. And it's like, goddamn, like how much violence have they been involved with over the years, whether it's to the infected or to their fellow human beings, because obviously as dangerous as the infected are, as we've seen, human beings are a huge danger to each other in this fictional setting as well. And I like how this episode periodically teased us a little exposition, a little information without it overwhelming the story, because as they're walking through the city and trying to be quiet and trying to find the least dangerous path forward where like the buildings haven't collapsed, etc. and so forth, they talk a little bit about the infected and how at different stages, some of them have these split open heads and they can see in the dark like bats, basically through sound. And there's some who supposedly spit spores at people. And during one of these discussions, suddenly we hear this really eerie, just horrible shriek in the distance. You're like, oh fuck, like this city is just crawling with these creatures. My only knock against this episode is that I continue to be a little annoyed by Bella Ramsey's interpretation of the character of Ellie, where I feel like she's trying, maybe she was just directed this way, but she's trying a little too hard to just be the constantly annoying kid who asks too many questions or does too many stupid things. And I still feel like she was a little bit miscast, or maybe I just got too attached to the original version of Ellie from the video game, because Pedro Pascal is basically playing Joel exactly as like written and acted in the original game. And so it's just Bella Ramsey's interpretation of the character is just a big departure, and she annoys the shit out of me. I just feel like if you're surrounded by things that can rip you limb from limb, that you might calm down some of your more annoying traits, but who knows, maybe she will grow as the season progresses. But as they're exploring this hotel, we get all these great details, like a frog moving along the piano keys. I thought that was a really cool detail. But we get a lot more exposition and background info. And Joel explains how some of the infected only last a couple months, but that there's some others that have been strutting around for 20 years. And I read this when I was just doing my research about the game, but the longer they live, the stronger they get, the more the fungus becomes like an impenetrable shell, making them much more strong, much more dangerous. And one of the most eerie shots all episode is when they're standing on the top of the hotel looking out over this, I don't mean just some huge like pedestrian area, and you see all the infected lying on the ground, and when a sunbeam comes along, they all kind of writhe in unison. And that's when we learn that a lot of the fungus, they have these tendrils like vines that go miles underground, so you can step on a cordyceps in one place and you can wake them up elsewhere, and they know exactly where to come to hunt you down. But then finally, when the action got underway this episode, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, they just put their foot all the way down on the accelerator, and they did not let up until the closing credits. It was so goddamn hardcore, so intense, with like the guns and the flashlights. moving through that museum, and it really felt like a brilliant survival horror game during that sequence. And Anna Torv did such a brilliant job of just selling the dread and the atmosphere. And the most alarming part of the whole episode is when the ceiling collapses behind them, barring their way backwards. And then ahead, they hear a little squawk, followed by these little clicks. And what was so fascinating about this scene with the two infected is seeing how composed Joel is under fire. You know he's fought these things before. He knows that they can't see shit. So even if he's shining a flashlight right in their face, he stays totally calm, totally immobile, knowing that they can't come after you unless they have a little bit of sound. And we see him just slowly and deliberately trying to reload his guns. And it was just, I can't speak for everyone else out there, but my palms were sweating profusely during that scene. And the infected just looked so goddamn gross. And I love how they initially kind of suggested through different panes of glass where you could barely see them apart from just how deformed their heads are. But then finally one's screams right into the screen. And then it was just on. It was guns a-blazing and axes to the head, and it was just total fucking chaos. And then the battle would be broken up by these periods of calm where, boots on little bits of broken glass, or Ellie exhaling, or whatever the case might be. Then the battle would be back on again. And it was just so satisfying when one went down and we see Joel just shooting it repeatedly in the head and all that fungus breaking apart. I mean, we're only 2 episodes in and I already fucking hate these creatures so goddamn much. And initially it appears as if they got off relatively light from this battle. Ellie gets bitten for a second time, and Tess explains that she twisted her ankle, but she just wants to keep moving, and she keeps urging them to move as quickly as possible. And when they finally get to this rendezvous point where they're supposed to hand off Ellie, they find nothing but dead bodies, and there's a trail of blood leading inside this building where they can basically gather from the position of the bodies that one of them was bitten. A fight broke out between the infected and the healthy, and they all lost, and it's just dead bodies everywhere, but it's fucking weapons and grenades and gasoline and all this shit. And that's when Tess announces that she's staying. Ellie immediately realizes that Tess is infected. She reveals this really gnarly bite wound on her neck, and already you can see gross little tendrils kind of growing along. And Tess's hand is already starting to shake. And that's when Anna Torv has this really emotionally impactful scene where she talks about how she can accept the fact that Joel never reciprocated the feelings for her that she had for him, but he has to do this one thing for her, that he has to continue with the mission, take Ellie west, and convince people of the truth that Ellie is immune, because Ellie got bitten for a second time. It's just a little scratch. And only 20, 30 minutes later, already Tess's neck is totally gnarly. And then we get what might be the best scene of the entire episode. Actually, I won't even say it might be. What's definitely the best scene, because Tess decides to stay behind. She's pouring out gasoline, getting everything ready. And as soon as this endless field of infected crawls in, and actually, I forgot to mention, as that field of infected are waking up, we saw these great little close-ups of all these little vines and tendrils coming out of the ground as they all come to. Just so fucking, it's beautiful and terrifying all at once. Just the attention to detail in this show is incredible. But as this endless horde comes in, she's trying and failing to light her lighter. And anybody who's ever tried to use one of those goddamn Zippo lighters can sympathize, because even if it's full, sometimes they just will not light. And of course, as they're running through, they hear the flint and the spark, and it's failing to go. And they all start slowing down, and they all start looking over at her. And my heart was just sinking. I was like, oh my God, this poor girl, what's going to happen? Because if memory serves, in the game, her fate is not shown on screen. It's suggested off screen, but I'd have to go back and revisit to be sure. And then in one of the grossest scenes that I've ever seen in my life, one of them comes up to her almost gently, opens his mouth, and moves in for a fungus French kiss with the tendrils coming out, and I about puked right in my shirt. But then thankfully, mercifully, the lighter lights hits the ground and the whole floor explodes. We hear them all screaming, and that was a nice little bit of payback for a badass character who sadly we only got to enjoy for 2 episodes. At any rate, the dynamic duo of Joel and Ellie, they are now a partnership moving forward just like in the game. And from what I've heard from some other people who did spoiler-free reviews of the whole season, episode 3 is going to have a bunch of new stuff that was alluded to in the game or suggested by the game, but not fully explored. But the teaser for the next episode looks absolutely incredible. As seen in the teaser, the characters played by Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman are joining the show, and obviously Murray Bartlett's got quite a lot of heat and momentum behind him right now after the incredible performance in season 1 of The White Lotus. So I really look forward to seeing what those characters bring to the table. So I just want to reiterate, I am enthralled by this show. All my reservations, all my second guessing, all my nitpicking from the first episode, more or less it's all been washed away, and now I'm just invested as a fan. Can't wait to see what comes next. This could end up being the best piece of genre entertainment that we see on TV all fucking year. And the year is just getting started, but goddamn, it's going to be hard to match just the gold standard of entertainment value that this show is delivering, at least 2 episodes in. But before I wrap up this video, I have to bring you some breaking news from Manscaped, the official sponsor of my podcast, Wrong Reel, because they now sell beard products. That's right, they're once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using the discount code WRONGREEL in all caps for 20% off and free shipping. So join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and check out their Performance Package 4.0. It includes their signature Lawnmower 4.0. The advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks on your delicate parts. It also comes equipped with a 4000K LED spotlight that will shine a light to the promised land that 2023 looks to be. And a grooming routine isn't complete without applying Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver before showing off your 2023 self. And to complete the set, Manscaped includes their Shed travel bag and anti-chafing boxer briefs as a free gift to keep your goodies stored comfortably. So if you like this channel or you like my podcast, please consider making a purchase using the discount code WRONGREEL. But thank you so much for watching my video. Hope everybody's enjoying the show as much as I am. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hunt me down on Twitter, all that jazz. But hope everyone has a great week. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.